I want to have a quick conversation with you about EMV versus NFC payments. Okay, I want to really explain the differences and also the implications for your payment processing model this year. So here are the facts I want you to pay attention to. When you think about EMV versus NFC payments, you have to really understand it's all about convenience, but it's all about also reliability. Okay, so basically what happens here is that NFC and EMV both refer to a relatively new terms in payment technology that together have changed the landscape of accepting credit card and also debit cards for merchants and consumers alike. Okay, so the shift is not just on the merchant's on the merchant's aspect of things, but also on the consumer's aspect of things. Now, what is the difference here? One thing for sure, you have to really understand that when you think about the NFC and EMV, you have to understand that it's all about the merchant, of course, but also the payment processor. So the payment processor industry has its own lingo, and to play the game, you've got to learn it. So from EMV chip cards to NFC payments, you really have to understand that the every sort of payment conduit has its pros and cons. So this is especially true given the EMV liability shift, which actually went down last year, and so you could be on the hook. By the way, from now on, you could be on the hook for certain types of fraudulent transactions if you haven't updated your POS to accept more secure forms of payments. So if you are a merchant and you really care about EMV versus NFC payments, you got to make sure that you are actually up to date. So, but what's the difference between those two? Well, first of all, you have to really understand that it's all about your clients. It's all about your geography. It's all about the demographics you're going after. But most importantly, it's all about the back office that supports that underlies the your payment processing. Okay, and so one thing you have to really understand also is that you have to update whether you go with EMV versus chip versus NFC. You have to really upgrade your payment processing as frequently as possible. So let me talk to you now about first EMV. So EMV stands for Europay, MasterCard, and Visa. So basically, this refers to a security standard which is exclusive to the payments industry. So the EMV infrastructure is actually separate from the previous MaxStrap standard and its related infrastructure. And so this technology is found on card readers and is a critical security feature on of your POS system. Okay, so that's important. When you hear the term EMV, think about Europay, Mastercard, and Visa. And so basically, now let me explain to you what EMV means in practice. So a transaction between a chip-enabled credit card as opposed to a magnetic strap-only card and an EMV-enabled payment terminal or ATM. So the thing is that EMV will soon become the technological standard for credit card processing in the U.S. And so basically, we're just switching over to EMV cards, aka chip cards, because they are legs more secure than the magnetic strap cards that we currently carry. And EMV cards contain a tiny dynamic computer chip that really talks back and forth with the payments terminal to make sure you're not a fraudster. You're not really a fraudster. Okay, the technology really works. In other countries, they have adopted EMV as the standard. Counterfeit fraud has dramatically declined, and so EMV card are steadily making their way into a mainstream rotation. So that's really good. Okay, and one thing you have to really understand here is that as a merchant, you have to really be sure that you are adapting your payment processing to the new shift. Okay, and it's also you trying to really have a sturdier, but also a more trusting relationship with your customer. If you want your customers to actually trust you as a reliable business, as a reliable business when it comes to protecting their data, so you shifting to EMV is going to help you big time. It's going to help you big time, and this technology again is actually going to stay here for a while. So the sooner you can switch, the better for you. Now let me talk to you about NFC. So I just finished talking to you about EMV. Let me talk to you about NFC. So NFC stands for Near Field Communication. So near field communication, and NFC refers to the radio frequency identification RFID technology that allows two devices to communicate with each other by simply being in close proximity to one another. Okay, and basically NFC is not exclusive to the payments industry, by the way, because RFID is actually been used in other industries, including inventory management, so warehouse management, inventory management, and so on and so forth. Okay, so when you think about the NFC transaction, basically all NFC transactions are actually EMV transactions powered by RFID technology. So that's really something to really remember. So basically, this is the technology that allows smartphones and other devices like a payments reader to communicate with each other when they are close together. They have to be close together. They have to be in a certain proximity, otherwise it wouldn't work. So NFC enables mobile payments, which are transactions that require no physical contact between the payments device and the payments reader. So that's really good. So at the moment, the buzziest example of NFC technology at work is Apple Pay. So to trigger an Apple Pay payments, you hold your iPhone 6 or iPhone 7, iPhone 8, or iPhone 12, or even Apple Watch up to an NFC reader, and the devices have to be pretty close, a couple of inches at the most. That's where the near part of near field communications actually comes in. So the transaction time is really fast. So the whole thing takes just seconds, really, really. And it's also very secure. And because Apple Pay, for example, works through Touch ID, Apple's fingerprint technology, things are pretty locked down even if your phone is stolen. And what's more, contactless payments like Apple Pay contain multiple layers of dynamic encryption. So that's really good because it really adds an extra layer of security to the whole transaction. That's really good. So the data associated with the cards you have on file is constantly changing. So even if fraudsters were somehow able to get in there, the information will be useless to them. So that's really good. So now you have a clear understanding of EMV and also of NFC. So what's really the difference here? So these technologies are essentially the same. I want to insist on that. They are essentially the same. In other words, they allow for payments to take place. However, the way they work is different. So standard EMV uses the chip enabled in the credit card to communicate with a card terminal, whereas NFC uses radio waves. Let me repeat that because this is critical. Standard EMV uses the chip embedded in the credit card to communicate with the card terminal, whereas NFC uses actually radio waves. So when you think about EMV credit cards versus NFC credit cards, you really have to understand that it really boils down to let's say validation, but also more importantly efficiency. So EMV credit cards contain a tiny computer chip with more sophisticated security features than magstripe card. They are encrypted, okay? And EMV credit cards are processed differently than magstripe cards. They are actually dipped instead of swiped. And NFC cards are equipped with a RFID technology that allows consumers to tap to pay. You have to tap to pay. And NFC credit cards do not need to be inserted into a payments reader. And so customers just hover or tap their card over the payments reader to initiate the transaction. So that tells you a lot about the speed of execution there. So the long and short of it is that basically when you think about EMV versus NFC technology, both are more secure ways to pay and to process payments than magstripe. Okay, this is something important to think about. And but you have a lot of NFC and also EMV payment providers out there. I mean, including Square, including Clover, including HealthSim. So you have a lot of choices. Now, whether you go with one or another will depend upon your business strategy, but also the specifics of the industry you're in. Like, what's the leader doing? What kind of practices are the competitors actually having? So let's talk about security here. Let's talk about safety. So are EMV NFC transactions secure? Of course, I think I've answered that question before, but I want to reiterate it here. So EMV was introduced to add additional security when processing payments to actually protect both the merchants and the cardholders, and actually also limit their exposure to fraud. Right. So when EMV was introduced around the world, it had a significant impact on card present fraud. Really, it was really big, big time. So so every time you process, let's say, an EMV transaction, the payment creates a unique transaction ID that cannot be replicated. That's really good because it really tells you that you have an element of tokenization that comes into play, but also granularity. So the fact that the unique transaction ID cannot be replicated really cuts down by 100%, if you will, the risk of fraud, because it means that the fraudster will have to guess the new transaction ID that the process initiated, and this is totally impossible. So this is really good. The payment creates a unique transaction ID that cannot be replicated, and the cards, and this is another biggie, the cards themselves are also more difficult for fraudsters to replicate compared to magnetic strap cards. So if you have, I want you to look right now in your wallet and see what kind of card you have. Do you have a mag strap card? Do you have an EMV card? Or do you have an NFC card? So depending upon the card you have, you might actually have like a more stability in terms of your protection against fraud. By the way, if you were to lose your card, or something were to have, somebody were to really snoop up on your data, okay, this is important. And when you think about EMV versus NFC transactions being secure, of course they are secure. They are secure in the sense that you are going to you can shop anywhere. Okay, it doesn't matter. And by the way, everything I'm telling you, it's not just applicable to the States. You can travel to Asia, you can travel to Africa, you can travel to Latin America, you can travel to Europe, and you still have the same sort of level of authentication and validation, but also security that's embedded into the card. So that's really good from an accountability point of view. Let me talk to you now about NFC technology. So, if a customer makes a purchase using NFC technology, then both Visa and MasterCard require the customer to hold their card or device close to the card reader for the transaction to be processed. Which means what? It just means that you have the amount of card present transactions going up, because the card networks are telling you we want to have we want to have the physical presence of the cardholder for this transaction to happen. So each NFC transaction also includes a unique security code to help protect against fraud. So this is kind of cool because it gives you a lot of safety, but also a lot of assurance that the transaction will go through in a very safe manner. Now, unlike chip and pin or EMV transactions, many NFC transactions have a limit of about $100 in case the card is stolen, and if the transaction amount is above that, then customers will need to insert their card into the terminal or enter their PIN for the transaction to go through. So you can see that the fact that you have this near field communication sort of process is really good, but because you have no biological sort of input, NFC technology, NFC standards want to make sure if you are going for a larger amount, you can't just hold and tap. You can't just tap and pay. No, you have to insert. You have to insert for the card reader to actually go through the whole process, including you providing your PIN for the transaction to go through. I mean, Apple does a great job already by making sure that you have the Touch ID, let's say, technology that really solidifies the level of guarantee, if you will, the level of security, if you will, that you have a fraud-free transaction. So that's really good. One thing I want to say about when you think about EMV versus NFC transaction security, one thing for sure, they are both secure, but they are secure actually at different levels. That's really something to really think about. They have different processes, but in the end, your data as a consumer is actually safe. Your data as a merchant is actually safe because card networks, among other stakeholders, are making sure that the data is safe. So let me give you some final thoughts here. When you think about EMV versus NFC payments, it's important to understand that NFC is actually a further development of EMV technology for use in payments. So if a credit card or a debit card or NFC enabled device is equipped with NFC, then cardholders are able to pay for a purchase by simply holding their card close to the terminal. But one thing I want to say here is that basically the fact that this technology is pretty powerful doesn't mean that it's sort of accessible across the board, because you still have to have a radio frequency. So if you don't have a radio frequency, let's say you are in an area, you are in a rural area, or you are in an area where there is it's kind of difficult to have a like a signal. If you don't have a radio signal or radio frequency, you don't have the NFC technology. Okay, so this is I mean, everything I'm telling you, EMV, NFC, all those processes are great if you want to have on the go credit card processing. Yes, that's true. On the go, so you can be mobile. You can do flea markets. You can sell online and what have you. But you have to make sure that every technology does have some limitations. But one thing I want to say also is that the ability for things to happen real fast is actually great with EMV or NFC. Okay, EMV is still powering NFC payments, and the old-fashioned chip and pin is often still required, especially if the amounts are going over $100. Okay, if you want to buy something and the bill is going to come at 101 for instance, you're going to have to insert the card if you have an NFC card, an NFC credit card. And before closing to this conversation, I want to say one thing is that basically in this economy, you have to really understand that technology is really moving real fast. Okay, and NFC versus EMV, that debate was pretty strong during COVID, for instance, where everybody was home, everybody was sitting at home, and consumers had to pay differently. Okay, because they had to shop, they had to transact, but there was no way to actually go physically to a store. So the technology was actually resilient because people were home, but still, NFC and EMV came out of the COVID era, stronger than ever. Okay, but what I'm trying to say here is that if you are a merchant, you have to adapt your payment platform to whatever technology is available out there. That means what? It means that you cannot discard completely Max Stripe card yet, because you still need to get paid, and some of your customers haven't gone through the shift yet, so you have to really maybe wait for them to actually do the shift. So in conclusion to this conversation, I spoke to you about EMV versus NFC payments. So I give you the facts and now the conclusion. So I explained to you what EMV is, what NFC is, the difference, and also the security of EMV versus NFC transactions. Thank you so much. God bless you. I'll see you next time. Until then, remember, stay marvelous.